In this episode of We Do a Little, we are joined by Dave Krugman. Dave is the founder of ALLSHIPS, the creator of Drive and Drip Drop, and just an overall incredible photographer building community and doing dope shit in the NFT space. We get to Dave's introduction to photography, his introduction to NFTs, his favorite books, his framework for creating, what we mean by the phrase the metaverse, and so much more. As always, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Andy, D's, and guests may own NFTs discussed.
This is Andy.
Yeah, I'm Bruce.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the newest episode of We Do a Little Pod. We're here with Dave Krugman, who is the creator of ALLSHIPS, the creator of the Drive collection, Drip Drops, a super rare artist, and an overall massive community builder in the NFT space. Just going to jump right in here with a standard question we used to start out, and is Dave, how did you get started with photography?
GM. Andy.
GM.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Well, that is a great question. So it actually starts kind of before I was even born. My grandfather and father were avid hobbyists. They had a dark room built in their basement.
Oh, wow.
My grandfather would collect cameras and was kind of like a equipment nerd. And, you know, his love of photography, he was always the one like snapping pictures of the family. All of our old like family photo albums are his film work. And, you know, that kind of that interest passed on to my father. And then when I was growing up, my father was always taking pictures of me. And I was actually like really camera shy. I'd always be like, don't take my picture. And I think that was because I always wanted to be on the other side. And, once I turned like, I don't know, I was like 9 or 10 years old and I went to summer camp and I went to go to a woodworking class and they're like, oh man, like we're full today, but go next door. There's a dark room class about black and white photography. And I went in there and it's like, you know, the light is all red. It's like, you know, you've probably seen this in movies, probably not in real life anymore. But I remember this moment of I went out, I took some pictures, I came back, I developed the film. And there's this moment I think every photographer who worked in a darkroom has where it's the first time you ever see, like you slip your paper into the developer fluid. And in this like super cozy room, low light, total silence, you just see this image emerge off the paper as the silver crystals like flip. And I mean, it's like the closest thing to magic I'd ever seen. I fell in love with it right away. So, you know, moving forward in my life, I was always, you know, getting the newest digital cameras and taking photos of everything from like bees in the garden to like, you know, my friends, and then up through high school, like photographing all the parties we were having. And then into college, I was shooting for the fashion magazine at BU. I think it was called the BU Buzz or something.
Nice.
That's a random memory I just accessed. And then, you know, I just always wanted to be a photographer. And when I moved to New York, I was lucky enough to get a job doing retouching work for Annie Leibovitz at her Greenwich Street studio that she used to have. And I realized, I was like, oh my God, like society has been telling me my whole life that there's no money in the arts. But I was like looking at the budgets for these, you know, Vanity Fair covers. And I'm like, oh, like, and I had this revelation. I was like, oh my gosh, like everything we look at, especially in a place like New York City, like there's art everywhere. Mm-hmm. Every piece of visual like pleasure that is like either it's branding or advertising or art for art's sake, or, you know, this bottle, like this is all artists getting paid to make work. And that was like a light bulb that went off in my head. And I decided that I'm going to go for this thing. I'm going to make sure that I can be a photographer because it's the thing I love.
And prior to that experience, like, were you still going down the photography path primarily, or were you like in school for something else, or thinking about like a business degree, or, you know?
Yeah, no. So that's a great question. So my dad was running the information technology systems at Boston University. Nice. So when it was time to go to college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an artist. People were like, okay. My guidance counselor was like, what do you really want to do? I was like, fuck you.
Go fuck yourself. Why would you ask me that?
I was like, okay. But it really, I did see a lot of barriers. I was like, what am I going to do here? So when it came time to choose a college, you know, if a lot of universities have a thing where if your parent works there, you get something called tuition remission. So you don't have to pay tuition. So it made a lot of sense for me to go to Boston University. So I went there and I was like, I guess I'll study. I wanted to be a writer, and I was like, oh, I'll try to be a writer. But I didn't get into the classes I wanted to get into, and I was like, I don't know what to do here. And I decided to study psychology, and that actually became, such an important step for me, because the only way I've made it as a photographer at all is by understanding evolutionary psychology and network systems, which is like all based on psychology. I mean, Twitter and Instagram, these are the biggest psychological experiments that have ever been performed on humankind. It's insane what we're doing with all that stuff. So when I was working, doing retouching for Andy Leibovitz, that's when Instagram came out. And I kind of understood that it was all like Pavlovian conditioning. Like, Pavlov's dogs, you ring a bell, their mouth waters because they're expecting the food. Yeah, they get the treat. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is these little likes and hearts. Like, this is all just like psychology. And I understood how to use the network to, turn myself into a hub in the community. And, with networks, basically, the more connections that flow through you as a hub, the more value flows through you. And on Instagram, the currency of that economy was attention. And so I could just slowly layer my market share of attention until I was able to leverage that into a job in advertising. And then I was running AT&T's Instagram account. And, they had huge budgets, and I was able to, give my favorite artists, huge bags to do the work they love.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of learned more and more about how social media affects, everything. And I was able to leverage that psychology degree into a successful career as a photographer and as a creative director, and now as the founder of ALLSHIPS.
It's really interesting that you mentioned the writing part, because when I think of you, I feel like you are a good writer. Like, my first introduction to you was reading the ALLSHIP blogs, or like the interviews and the writing on ALLSHIPS. And it was like, meant you on a space, but then I went to the site and read everything. It was like, clearly you're a very articulate, well-written individual. So it's like funny to see that seed of, your first inkling of what you wanted to do is I wanted to write.
Oh yeah. Cause I love reading. Like, I think reading is one of the most important things in the world. Like, I think everyone should be reading more, even me. I do read every day, but
what are some of your, like, just to go on a tangent, like, what are like top 3 favorite nonfiction books?
Nonfiction. I'm just going to say books. I'm not going to categorize them. I think the most important book for this audience that will be watching this is a book by Merlin Sheldrake called Entangled Life. And it's a comparison of internet network systems with mycelium networks of mushrooms. And it's actually my thesis for everything I'm doing in blockchain.
I need to read that. Yeah, I don't even think I've heard of this.
Yeah, wait, so
astounding.
Expand on that. What about it?
So mycelium, is the root systems, the root network systems of the fungus kingdom. There's fungus, there's plants, there's animals, right? These are the kingdoms of life. Fungus precedes plants and animals by I don't want to say because I'm going to get it wrong, but
billions of years.
A long time. Hundreds of millions of years, if not a billion years. Somebody fact check me. But we take it for granted. We're like, oh yeah, mushrooms, ha ha ha. But every inch of soil is permeated by these mycelium networks. And it's to the degree where plants can't even live on land without a symbiosis with fungal networks. Because there's like I call it like the Uniswap of the forest. Fungus is like the Uniswap of the forest, because fungus helps trees access minerals that are locked away in the soil, because they break them down and then they have like a carbon exchange and a phosphorus exchange with forest systems. And it becomes like, they call it the wood wide web. It's like the entire natural world is interconnected through mycelium networks. Now, the interesting thing about mycelium networks is that they're decentralized. They're truly decentralized organisms. So like any section of the mycelium network can regenerate the entire network. And there's no central locus of control. There's no brain. It's just it's actually the most decentralized form of life.
They're all just nodes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They're just nodes.
Yeah.
In a giant decentralized network. And the symbioses and the way that they, unite the literally like the life force of the ecosystem, it's astounding. And I really think like, if you think of ETH or, any cryptocurrency as like these different, network nutrients, they're all flowing through. And like, I think about our whole community as like this giant thriving biological organism.
I think it's a really good way to think about it.
Yeah. And then it helps me understand how to operate within this digital biology
Mm-hmm.
because I can just mimic what the mushrooms do. I'll take it one step further because I think this is really interesting. So if you think of so the mushroom is the fruiting body of the decentralized network,
Mm-hmm.
and it propagates the network. It sends out billions of spores, and then those spores turn into new networks, and it propagates the entire system. So if you think about what is an NFT, like what is an art NFT? What is like a Sam Spratt piece or a Fuo piece, right?
Yeah.
It's this beautiful like
Mushroom.
Amanita mushroom, like literally bursting up from the network because of all the nutrients that flowed towards it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it bursts through like this, like the wet undergrowth, and it comes up and it spreads the mimetics of the whole network around. And it's like there's such a variety of different mushrooms, and they attract different kinds of life, and they use the animals inside that ecosystem to help propagate the network further by, when they eat them, and then the spores go everywhere. And it's like art is the like mimetic mushroom of the decentralized biology that we're building together.
You're building so you have more mushrooms, you have more species of mushrooms. It's kind of like more genres of art or more different pieces of art. Different species attract a different type of collector, potential user. Mm-hmm. Then you're saying, this new mushroom that just came out, it's a brand new one. It's like our friends in California making their own fucking like psychedelic oyster mushrooms or whatever. And then they're like, boom, I have this Fuo thing. It's this new thing. Collector picks it by inserting a bunch of ETH, therefore spreading kind of this mimetic value of, hey, this piece is worth $100,000+. Here's a signal that this person might be somebody.
Yeah.
Gets other people's attention.
100%.
And then maybe a bigger, more beautiful mushroom comes out next time.
Yeah. And then like think about the ways you could call scammers or people that come in and like clear cut the forest. They don't replant anything. They're damaging the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like if you want to think about how to build properly in the space and build for longevity, be a gardener. Don't be extractive. Like you're a great example of this, where you add so much back to the ecosystem. And it's one of the quotes I always lean on is, if you add value before you ask for value, you never have to ask because the ecosystem will feed you. And I just really that's my core thesis in everything I'm doing in this space. And that's what ALLSHIPS is too.
Yeah. ALLSHIPS
is my way to be like, if you're in my garden, like I'm watering, I'm putting fertilizer around, we're eating together. It just makes life better too, to live that way. So
no, it's really interesting you say that, because that's kind of how I built whatever I have now. It was like I spent a lot of time just in like Punk's Discord, Artblock's Discord, helping people for free, like never asking for anything, because I was gaining so much value from participating and just like trading the market, and that like it made sense to just help the new people who were coming in. Like it was like, I'm not doing anything anyway, waiting to trade. And then like building up all this goodwill without ever really asking for favors or anything turns into this massive platform that I can now share.
Right. And like another thing I love to say about that is, and this is the ALLSHIPS ethos as well, is, if you spend a year lifting up one person a day, and in your moment of need, like 365 hands are going to lift you up, because like they remember that one moment. They're like, oh yeah, he helped me. I'll retweet that. I'll share that. Like today I have this drop on Nifty Gateway, and I'm like, I put out one tweet and it's like 100 retweets, and I didn't ask anybody.
Yeah.
But it's like, they're like, oh, I remember that one time. He was always nice. So I'm just going to do this little tiny favor. And then in aggregate, it's like the whole ecosystem is like, because you don't need that every day.
Sending you nutrients.
Yeah, exactly.
And that kind of stuff all like really compounds on itself as well, where the more that you're doing that and creating systems where you're collaborating with other people who are also doing that, you create this like really, really strong like mesh of people who all can support each other and bring new people in, and are able to bring new people in like very easily as well. And I think that's been one of the really interesting things to see, especially like transitioning from spending a lot of my time in the DeFi space to the NFT space. And like, it feels very different, where the DeFi can feel so competitive, and there's a lot of, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of competitiveness in NFTs and all of that, but even more so in the DeFi space. Yeah. And it's very refreshing seeing a lot of people rooting for each other a lot more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, DeFi is like a forest with no mushrooms.
Yeah.
Like there's no like, there's no like, artists brought that pop of color and culture. And I think, Colborn of Museum of Crypto Art, we were on a Spaces like 2020 or something, and he said crypto art is the greatest hack to bring the most creative people in the world onto blockchain technology. And I think that's what's happened over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And now there's like a real like thriving, bubbling culture here.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes this technology actually like viable. Without that, it's like this niche little, financial product. But with the artists, like it's this, think about other movements like this. Like this reminds me of like the early hip hop movement. This reminds me of like, the Warhol, the factory. It reminds me of like Cubism in the early 1900s, and just like these little artist communities getting together, discovering a novel form of technology, or the electric guitar coming out, right? And they use that technology in ways to create cultures that change the world.
Yeah.
And it's the artists who are the ones that make it, like such a huge industry. Like think about how big the music industry is, right?
Oh, it's
huge. Without the Beatles, like, does it exist? You need the people that like are the, cultural phenomenons to actually create the markets that drive the world.
Well, yeah. And then you have all these different people who are like, excuse me, like thinking about like DeFi and stuff and saying, oh yeah, there isn't really a real use for blockchain other than speculation and all that. It's like, no, like that use is here now, and it's collecting art and participating in these more cultural markets that are like purely on chain. And like, I don't think people respect enough, and they just like maybe don't get it yet, but they will at some point because they'll have to, that like it is a very real economy and market that is growing on chain that also then gives a lot more use and credence to a lot of the stuff that isn't just buying crypto art that is happening on chain. And I think a lot of the outside of NFT people, even in crypto, don't appreciate how important it is to have real digitally native goods and services that users actually want to buy.
Exactly.
We only got one book out of you.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna,
God. Okay, wait.
Wait, Dia said only nonfiction. I'm going to say, screw that. I'm a big fiction fan too. So
okay. So the other book that I would recommend everybody read is a book by Dan Simmons called Hyperion.
I've heard of it.
It's too. So good. And so it's a science fiction like tale. It runs over 3 books, maybe 4 books, whatever. It's a series, and it's written in the style of the Canterbury Tales, which is like an old English storytelling motif where it's kind of like Knights of the Round Table. It's like you have like a cast of characters that are all together and they're all like sharing a story of one of their adventures, right? But it's that, but like in space, like 300 years in the future or something like that. And the reason this one is a book worth mentioning right here is because it was written in 1989 and it's like so insanely prescient of like what, the way that we use networks now. There's a thing called the all thing, and that's a like intergalactic internet. And then they have like the way that you can communicate like across the galaxy is called the fat line. And it's like, there's this one passage where he's describing, he's a writer, and he's like, I became consumed by the all thing. And like every day I'd wake up and comment on any political issue, like no matter how small, I was in every conversation. And like, I thought I was a, genius, and I was, manipulating all these conversations. It's like, he's describing Twitter. Yeah. It's like how people get addicted to Twitter. I was like, oh my God. And so, Balaji. What am I?
Close. Yeah. It's a tough name.
It is.
Balaji. He just retweeted somebody's like screen capping of that exact passage of Hyperion. Wow.
I'm a big science fiction fan, so I'll have to do that one. I'm currently listening. I do audiobooks because I'm a really slow reader. But Project Hail Mary.
I haven't heard of it.
It's really, really good. It's super interesting. It's a pretty new book, but it's about this. Basically, there's like a new particle on Earth, and people don't really know what it is, and it's like killing Earth. And so a group of scientists all get sent out on like a spaceship to like find the origin of where this thing is, and they have an idea of where it is. And it's like they're basically on a suicide mission to go figure out the origin of this and like send back like a note to Earth to explain how to kill it.
Oh my God.
And
I got to read that.
It's really, really good. But so what's really interesting about it is it's mostly told like right away. It's told from the perspective of the one surviving person still on the spaceship who wakes up from a coma and is at their destination, but everyone else on the spaceship is dead.
Oh my God.
And it's him trying to like figure things out. And really like, this isn't a spoiler. You learn it very, very early on, is like another ship shows up where he is. That's not from Earth.
Right.
And it's about him trying to like figure this thing out with another life form who doesn't speak the same language and all this stuff. And it's incredibly interesting. And they're like going back and forth between the period of time where they're like learning that everyone's going to die on Earth if they don't go do this. And then also him like in current time trying to figure out what to do and do it all. It's really
That's
really
my type of book. I also love the 3-body problem.
I have that downloaded. That's next on my list.
It's like a dense one, but it's really rewarding if you get through the whole series. Really, really love that. And also one thing I'd recommend is just like I kind of get obsessed with authors and I just go read everything they've written.
I do that too.
And so I mean I think everybody who's interested in science fiction should go read like as much as they can of Asimov. When you read Asimov, you're like, oh, every single science fiction movie that ever came out is like a cheap ripoff of an Asimov short story.
100%.
And you're like, oh my god, like there's nothing original.
Yeah.
Same with like if you like science fiction and movies and stuff like that, go watch like the original Twilight Zone. Because like every episode of Twilight Zone was turned like there's a episode of the Twilight Zone that is basically the Matrix.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my god, like this is like the Matrix is unoriginal. Wow. Like, so right now I'm reading a bunch of stuff by Robert Heinlein, who he wrote Starship Troopers.
Okay.
He wrote The Moon is a Harsh Mistress and Stranger in a Strange Land. I'm like almost done with.
Nice.
So Stranger in a Strange Land is about this like Martian that like lands on Earth, and it's all this like geopolitical conflict about like
interesting
sovereignty, and yeah, it's just really fascinating.
Do you do any like, as opposed to science fiction, more like fantasy stuff as well, or?
Yeah, so I've read like the whole Game of Thrones series, much better than the show. It's really amazing. I was a big fantasy.
The books.
Oh, dude, the books are so good.
They haven't finished them.
I know.
It's like, George, what are you doing, dude? Like, you could die any day now.
I know.
You're old.
They're not coming, bro. That's such a Game of Thrones thing.
Yeah.
For him to not finish
Yeah,
it.
but like Game of Thrones.
Perfect ending of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
That it never ends.
Yeah, it's like, if you think about it,
Winter is
the whole point of Game of Thrones is like they make you fall in love with people and then they cut their heads off.
and then the author makes you fall in love with the series and doesn't finish
and then he
it.
cuts its head off. So, damn, look at the.
Oh wow! Yeah,
I know.
it's
So
raining hard out.
we were going to get coffee this morning, and I was going like 7:30. I got to the coffee shop. I'm sitting in line. My friend to a meeting texts me, "Fuck!" in all caps, and I'm like, "What do you mean, fuck? Like, did you get in an accident?" And I turn around, and it's just pouring, and he comes in soaking wet. I'm just like,
Poor Luke.
that's how it
Shout out
happens
to
in New
Luke.
York.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. This is my type of weather.
Yeah.
Drip drop.
Oh yeah.
Have you done the read the King Killer Chronicles?
No.
I'd highly recommend that one too. It's one of my favorite like relatively traditional hero's journey kind of style of books, but I really am a sucker for a fantasy like series that does magic in an interesting way, because I think that there's like the really cheap version of magic where it's just like magic exists,
Yeah.
and then there's like the story where the author is conjuring a world in which magic could exist.
Right.
And so in this one, the first book, I think it's called The Name of the Wind. And basically like this person can essentially like, you can speak to elements if you have certain kind of just like bits about yourself. And so that's like his thing. So like he knows the name of the wind and he can like conjure it
cool.
when needed. It's a really, really good, pretty traditional hero's journey story, but really, really well done. Great world building. I love good world building.
Yeah,
That's
dude.
like my
So
big thing.
it's funny you say that because I see I actually pair all my super rare pieces with my writing.
Mhm.
I like open up the file and I put it in the metadata like of the actual
That's
JPEG.
sick. That's really cool.
And so if you go to my super rare and you like download an image and you hit info, you'll see like all this, there's stories. inside
That's
of it.
really sick. I'll have to check that
And
out.
the reason I do that is because I see like photography for me is like visual poetry.
Mhm.
So like it's street photography is like jazz improvisation. Like you have all these elements coming at you and it's up to you to like find the confluence of circumstances that like have this, what Henri Cartier-Bresson calls the decisive moment. So like, what about that moment? Like what words, what visual vocabulary can you put together to make like a beautiful masterpiece, like a visual poem? And so, what I love about reading and writing is that you're creating the scaffolding and then your imagination builds upon it.
Yeah.
And like one of the reasons I love an author like Hemingway is because Hemingway was the master of like sparseness.
Mhm.
And what that allows is like the more gaps you leave, the more the imagination gets to work. It's why books are always better than movies.
Yeah.
There's no movie that can outperform your imagination.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with photography. Like this drop I'm doing, chiaroscuro, is all like shadow and light.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really based on this book by Mark Halperin called In Sunlight and in Shadow. And it's this epic novel about New York City and like the mafia and like post-war New York. And it's one of the most beautiful books I've ever read in my life. And it's one of the pieces in this drop is called Sunlight and Shadow because it's kind of a nod to that. But the intersection of the written word and the visual image is something I'm just endlessly fascinated with.
Yeah. That's really interesting. That's cool.
So that was 2 books. Zooming out, that was like, damn. I feel like I don't read enough nonfiction. I don't read enough fiction. I read so much nonfiction, and it really think my whole childhood, all I read was fiction. Mm-hmm. It was like I got an Artemis Fowl, Aragon, every youth novel from like
YA.
age 10 to 21. Like I felt like I read, and then something happened. I went to college. I stopped reading altogether, and then after college, I've been much more like nonfiction. It's like going down. And a lot of it has to do with the psychology part. Like I'm reading nonfiction stuff to learn more about how my brain works. So it's like reading books like Influence and Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. And it's reading like Impro by Keith Johnstone. And it's figuring out ways to act better or like understand my own operating system and then make better decisions. It's like much more utilitarian based and less enjoyment.
I feel you. I mean, my operating system is fucked.
Like we're all using like Windows 10,000 BC in our head at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, so I love that you said that, because this is another one of my theses about what we're doing here. And so I said earlier that like all my success comes from my understanding of evolutionary psychology. So for tens of thousands of years, as we developed into modern day humans, we optimize for an environment that is completely foreign from the one we live in. And, exactly.
This.
Talk about a world where magic can exist. We're in it. And, so like our actual operating system is that of a hunter-gatherer. And so like, the very act of collecting is completely like embedded in our DNA. And so is like storytelling and so is, community building, tribalism. Like these are things that we're just not going to shake. We just replay them in abstracted layers. And the deeper we get into technology, the more abstracted they become. And so right now we are like, the crypto art space is the digital savannah, and we're all wandering around. We're gathering the abstraction of resources like, crypto dick butts. I mean,
most valuable. They're
very rare
to bring our, back to our community and social signal and show value. And, if you understand that, then you can look at evolutionary psychology and be like, oh, I know how to succeed here. Cause how would you succeed in a tribe of, hunter gatherers? You would, make alliances, you build your community, you bring the community together around the campfire. Twitter Spaces, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's oral. Twitter Spaces is like the oral history of what we're building.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're just endlessly repeating these cycles throughout every layer of our technological evolution as well as our biological evolution.
Yeah, and on the Twitter Spaces level too, like they're just too ephemeral. Like it is like you're Homer orating to a live audience, and then there's no real saving and distribution of it. It's just like once it's ended, most people don't listen to the recordings. It's done. Like that's a big reason we got behind this. It's like, all right, we can have like more timeless conversations that. If someone comes and looks at this in 3 or 5 years, they can be like, still get something from the conversation.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, damn, that was such a good conversation. I can't believe it all went to zero.
Like, well, either that or fuck, I can't believe I missed that nifty gateway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is alpha from the. I'm speaking to you from the past. This is alpha. Buy my drop tonight.
They're going to listen to it like a month and a half from now and be like,
what?
Fuck.
Yeah. God damn it.
But no. One thing too, just like on books, this is like a real small question, but what's your preferred medium? Are you someone who still buys and collects the physical? Do you do a lot of reading like through
I read on Kindle because I mean, look, I much prefer a real book. Don't get me wrong. And I think I actually should be reading more real books just to stay off my phone because it's ridiculous. But what I do is I invert my screen on my phone. And so it's like white text on a black background, and I put my brightness all the way down, so it's almost like it looks like e-paper almost because it's so dim. And I just like tap through books, and like that way I read. On my way over here on the train, I read like 2 chapters.
Are you so like my biggest thing with Kindle is the notes and highlight section. Do you use those? Because I feel like there's so much power. I started using this app called Readwise, and what it does is you connect your Kindle account to it. In every day or every week, whatever way you set it up, it'll send you your own notes. So like it sends me notes that I took of books I read like 5 years ago.
That's incredible.
And I'm like, oh shit, like I forgot about that.
Yeah.
And then like it kind of primes it in your head. So like it
resurfaces it in a cool way.
I don't know. It's something where like I didn't really realize what I was doing with all my Kindle notes. And then when I found this app, it was like, oh shit, like That's a lot of good information. Like, I wish I took more notes.
Yeah, that's actually incredible, dude. I'm gonna get that.
Yeah,
it's one of the things. I did take a lot of notes on Entangled Life because it's that important.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally like that's the biggest alpha I could share of all time.
Yeah,
it's like read that.
No,
book.
it's to the top of the list now.
Read that book. Like,
I mean, I honestly should just buy it.
Yeah,
like,
I literally said I was thinking the same thing. I'm gonna buy it right now.
I'm out here selling books.
Yeah.
So like, I'm a big Audible user now that I find myself traveling a lot, and Entangled Life, Merlin Sheldrake,
yeah.
buy with 1 credit, boom, it's going in.
Hell yeah,
easy.
But seriously, like we could.
The audiobooks just make it so much easier to consume. Like you said, I have the phone or the iPad and I'm reading it, and like I'm not good about having the focus mode on all the time, and I just get fucking distracted.
Yeah. That's why I typically am reading many books at the same time.
100%. I'm at least reading 3 or listening to 3.
So I'm the opposite. I'm always 1.
Right now I have like House of Morgan, Warhol Diaries, The Power of Now. I have a little eclectic mix going on in Audible.
Yeah, for me, it's like I get so distracted by things in general that like in the places where I can, I really like to try to focus down. And so like that for me is one where it's like, okay, I'm going to read this book, and what I'll try to do is like, if I'm doing that and I'm not really progressing or I'm not listening to it as much, I'll be like, all right, maybe this just isn't the right book, because I have had a lot of times where I'm doing one and I'll power through it really, really fast. And so if I'm not doing that for one, then probably it means I'm not that interested in it.
Yeah, I think that's why I like to have multiple, because it's like, I don't really need the Eckhart Tolle right now. Like, let me just hear more about like how the House of Morgan.
Yeah, so with that, I do podcasts. I do a lot of podcasts.
I listen to I inhale podcasts.
What are some of your favorite podcasts?
The ALLSHIPS podcast.
Of course.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that's the best one, but other than that one.
And then we do a little.
And then we do a little.
This podcast is my favorite. Man, Lex Fridman, love. Yeah. I like Joe Rogan generally, but like sometimes like some of the guests I just can't stand. Like I can't stand listening to them because they're so stupid. I'm like,
It is super entertaining.
But so it's really interesting that the first 2 you named are like the 2 I probably listen to the most in my life, and it's not like I agree with what everybody on there ever says, but
no, of course
the mix of guests.
Yeah, no, I love I love that podcast. It's just that like I literally check who the guest is because I like don't need to hear some of the like
you don't need another Alex Jones.
No, like I just can't.
Yeah.
No, I think like we'll get to a point with this where it's kind of similar, where like you might go and you'd be like, I only want to listen to the artists. Right. And then other people are going to be like, I only care about what the builders or investors think. And it's like just having that mix.
Yeah, I think it's really important.
Really important.
I also love comedy podcasts. There's like a great one I always listen to called My Brother and Me. It's like 3 brothers who like, grew up in the same house, obviously. And they're just like, their banter is just so funny. And they go to old Yahoo Answer like message boards, and they read the question and then they like answer it. And it's just like, dude, it'll have me belly laughing. It's so good. So yeah, and Jordan Jesse Go is another great comedy podcast. It depends what I'm in the mood for. I listen to The Daily. I listen to a lot of news stuff. Hear about how fucked up the world is.
Oh yeah.
I am so far removed from the news. I think there was a period in time where I was on Reddit all the time, and then the 2016 election happened, and then I stopped going to Reddit, and then there hasn't been a place I go for news since. Like I see things on Twitter. If something big happens, like even if it isn't in our community, like it gets shared. Yeah. And if it isn't, it's probably
that's better to do that. Cause like there's just so much, and that's one of the problems of our society today is like we are so bombarded by like, we're not built to absorb like the trauma of the entire world, Yeah. And but we're exposed to it every day. And even Twitter will do this where it's like, I'll get a notification from Twitter that's like flooding and blah, 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 like kills 1,000 people. I'm like, oh my God, like that's awful. And it's just like, but they give you the notification because they know that you're going to click it. Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, oh, I got to see where this flood happened. Yeah. Like I get those all the time. I have an alt account that no one knows that only has like 50 followers. And I don't have it disabled for notifications. And I get alerts all the time about my city. It's like, oh, this person was found guilty of like homicide or like, oh, this person shot somebody at a football game. And you're like, Jesus, like what is going on?
This goes back into the problem and like hopefully the solutions we can find in Web3. The problems with Web2 is like when you base the entire network system of the internet on the attention economy, like the only logical end of that is this, dystopian
it's this
media
fire
landscape,
hose of fear mongering.
Yeah, but like so the way that the internet was built, it was like funded by advertisers. And so like the entire system is built to, help corporations get their messages in front of you.
What's been interesting to see how it progressed too, because I feel like in the 90s and stuff, it was a lot more open source, a lot more like standard protocols. You had people adopting HTML, World Wide Web. You had this more like open source ethos. And then the transition from Web 1 to Web 2 became much more like proprietary and closed systems where the bigger corporations were extracting most of the value. Obviously, the advertising that Google and the big companies can do is just crazy now. And it's how do we get back control as network participants?
I think it's with decentralized network systems.
Like,
so
hopefully that's why we're here.
I know, right? But seriously, like think about it this way, like there's the early open internet kind of, but very few people had access to be able to build on it. And then there was no like social layer, right? There's no like people aren't socializing in online spaces. It was like read only. And then Web 2 is like, okay, now you can read and write. So now we have the ability to be social creatures. And you also have online identity that you can aggregate attention around, and you can build a community around because you have a persistent presence that, is like a magnet that like people are like sticking to, right? After that, now it's like, okay, now that we have the social layer, now we can have niche economies and communities because we have decentralized peer-to-peer value systems. And I think that's the key thing that needed to happen for us to break out of the walled garden of like Meta and Twitter and into this, now that's the social layer that's there and it's not going anywhere. But now we have like the actual like real community layer that can be decoupled from the advertising model. Prior to Web3, like the only way for me to profit off of my presence online is I rent my name literally from Mark Zuckerberg. Right. I rent my identity. Then I can spend 10 years building up, I have like 320,000 followers on Instagram, and every day less people see my shit.
And it's like any day Mark Zuckerberg can just be like, oh, that thing you did was like offensive. And now your account's banned.
Right. And so he can literally like digital human
deplatform you.
Yeah. But like, it's even worse. It's like he can like, not even just deplatforming. It's like they can commandeer your identity. And like, we spend, half of our waking hours online. So it's like, that's a huge part of who you are. And I think what the advantage that we have with Web3 is like my wallet is like mine no matter what. Even if like there's sanctions and I get delisted from OpenSea, it's still on the Ethereum blockchain.
Yeah, it's not
you still own it.
Yeah, and I still own it. And so now, my root identity layer online is now sovereign to me. And what that does is it turns the previous identity, which was my social media, that's my marketing arm, that's my community building arm, but it's not me. There's like my wallet is like my digital DNA beneath everything, and it turns all the rest of the internet into a service for that original identity. And like I will be building, 110% of my energy will go into building that identity over any sort of, Web 2 property that can just be revoked from me at any time. I mean, once you get into Web 3 and you look back at the world in which you only have Web 2, where that's your endpoint, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that like we signed that deal in like 2011. That's like, I'll give you everything I've ever made for free, and you can sell ads against it for billions of dollars. Yeah. I get nothing.
I'm an artist. I made all the art that brings the people to your platform. Like, content is king. We're the content creators. And at the end of the day, the content creators don't get rewarded. It's just the platform that allowed the content creators to put shit on their servers and display it to millions of people.
And that's why we have so much leverage right now. And that's why, like, dude, I'm scrolling through Instagram and they're from their creators page. It's like they're doing like NFT 101. They're like teaching people how to make a wallet. I'm like, why would they do this? This seems, but because they know that it's not like they have to like readjust to the new reality. And they're investing so heavily in this. So I think it's really, really bullish. And people are always like, oh, like Web 2, Web 3. It's like, guys, this is all part of the same arc towards greater decentralization.
Well, it's like at the base layer, you have the Ethereum blockchain. And it's like, good to see that, okay, above the base layer, we have this, we'll call it maybe the third or fourth layer where Instagram is, and they're plugging into what we've done here. Yeah. And it's like, that's valuable. That is lending credence to what we've been spending time on. That's saying, hey, we've seen what you've done since, I might fuck this up, Ethereum came out in 2014 maybe?
Something like that.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, over the last 8 years, like we've seen what you've built. There's value here. Now we, a massive like top 5 company in the world, are going to take resources to allocate to build on top of that. That's really powerful. Right. And people just like want to shit on it because it's like, oh, it's fucking Instagram. And it's like, well, you might not use Instagram or want those features, but that is legitimizing the technology in more people's minds than not.
It's also the only way this works. I mean, in long term, like
we're not going to have a decentralized Instagram.
No,
I think there's this dream that we have a decentralized social network. Like we have a Web3 Discord or Web3 Twitter. And it's like this space needs to grow 100x plus for there to be the users to adopt that new social network. Like we don't have the amount of people going to these apps. Like I've messed around a little bit with Farcaster. I love it, but like there are some insightful conversations there and there are really good people. It's a really high signal network, but like trying to get that out to the masses just doesn't seem feasible when the net population of the crypto space is still so small.
I think so far. What did you say, Farcaster?
Yeah.
So what is that? Because
it's like a decentralized Twitter.
Okay, so Farcaster is the like transportation portal technology from Hyperion.
Well, that was definitely.
I bet Dan was.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah,
there's a lot of Web3 companies that use the terminology that was coined in Hyperion as well. Because it's it's just such an interesting book.
I just bought the Neil Stephenson book that everyone recommends. That like
Snow Crash.
Yeah. Like coin the metaverse or whatever.
Yeah, that's a great book too. That's a weird, wacky like.
It's sitting. So I bought that, and then the book, The Metaverse by Matthew Ball, who's someone who writes a ton of actual like nonfiction about metaverse statistics, whether it's Roblox, Fortnite, Minecraft, all that stuff.
Also, when I say metaverse, like I think this is an interesting point to talk about. When I say metaverse, I mean like the digital social fabric.
Yeah.
I don't mean like sandbox.
Yeah. No, when
like, I'm like metaverse is like our texts too.
Yeah. Like Twitter.
To me,
it's our group chat. It's like this. It's anything that is not like this.
Yeah. 100%.
I think Matthew Ball, I was stealing this from him. He said it's a 3D representation of the internet in like any format. So like you reading your text is the 3D interpretation in that 100%. Model. But like if we have AR glasses, that's also a 3D interpretation. Like if you're looking at a computer screen in a 3D world, also 3D representation. So it's just a super broad way of saying like 3D representation of the internet.
Yeah. It's funny you said 3D glasses too. Like I think these are gonna look so ridiculous. Like phones are gonna look so ridiculous in 5 years, dude.
5? I hope.
I honestly think so. Like I think that like this is just this is a little window that we have to hold in order to look into the metaverse layer. But like once we have it in our glasses or contacts or whatever like that, like it's just gonna be everything's gonna be like all around you. So like we can have a chess game. Like that's my dream is to play like hologram chess, like in Star Wars. Like,
I feel like you can like damn near do it with your phone.
Well, you can, but you have to look through this device.
Yeah. But just get a headset, bro. You're in.
Not good enough.
You've seen the Sony ones, right? Where like you slide your phone in and it's like I'm in the metaverse.
But dude, also,
my phone is getting 300 degrees, 3 inches from my face.
My eyes are boiling.
The radiation that I'm getting, I'm in the metaverse.
But like, imagine a world in which I could just be like, "Yo, we can all log into like my address at this table, and like we can all see from our own perspective like the art that I have in my wallet."
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No.
It could be like swirling around
me.
Yeah,
I could be like cyber gallery.
Yeah.
A Jen Stark vortex is just on the wall, and you're just melting into it.
Yeah. I mean, that's so much sooner than we think, dude.
I hope. And
I also think that's like everyone who's collecting like digital sculptures, like like Roger's Artifacts project, right? Like people are collecting for the future when you can just put that anywhere. Like it'll just be floating around you. Like you could have a dinner party and the centerpiece is like a Ralph Grassetti.
Yeah. No, like On Cyber is the one that unlocked that for me. Like placing things in On Cyber and messing around with it got me to the point where I'm like, all right, there's a world where this is like your house. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're just placing like on this wall, I want this. And then here I have this. And then you have like different skins. So like if Dave comes over and we eat 2 grams of mushrooms, like I got the mushroom room and I just boom, enable it. And it just goes from adventure and landscape photography to like Jen Stark, Pop Wonder, Killer Acid shit, Brian Brinkman's, and it's just a whole
we'll have digital
vibe.
Psychedelics. Like, well, it'll be fucking crazy. I can't wait.
Like that's how I design the On Cyber rooms right now. I like try to think like how would I put this in my house or like a
I love On
gallery.
Cyber, man. They're so good.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I'm an angel investor for the people who are like, why am I shilling my bags? I feel like I have to say that type of stuff. I don't know why. I feel this extreme
I think because you're responsible.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're supposed to do.
I don't know, I feel like in this space, there's a lot of gray area.
Can I talk a bit about like the projects I've built and why?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of interesting. So okay, so
well, I guess can we go even one step back from that? And you were talking about art, photography, all of that. When did that go from just taking photos to minting an NFT?
Right. So okay. So first of all, shout out to Jay and Silva. You guys should definitely have him on.
So yesterday, did we get at least one shout out for JN from the pod yesterday? It was like, JN's the GOAT.
Yeah. So JN, I would hold responsible for like onboarding maybe thousands of artists, myself included. He was, hammering me about crypto all through COVID. And like, he's like, dude, like, so him and I met in 2014 or 13 and we became like the go-to community builders for the photography community on Instagram in New York City. And because of my position at BBDO running AT&T's Instagram, I was able to put a lot of resources into that community. And we would host photo walks with like 400 people, dude. It got so crazy that we had to stop hosting photo walks because the attention economy, people would do anything to get a shout out from somebody who had a lot of followers. So like we would be walking down the street and somebody would like run up and get on top of a car and be like, take my picture. And we're like, yo, chill. Don't do that. And it became like almost scary, like to see people's psychology being affected by this attention model so much. Anyway, that's a story for another day. But point is, we spent years, like a decade, building communities in the attention economy in Web 2 and doing projects. And he helped build the Sony Alpha Collective, which we're all a part of, which is Sony Alpha's like Web 2 empire of like influential photographers. But he was the first member of that and helped pick like the original team. So anyway, we have always been kind of co-conspirators in network effect and how to use networks to provide value to communities. And so when he started talking about NFTs, I was like, I don't get it, man. Like, I don't really know what you're talking about. Like, I don't know. I'm just going to focus on, I don't even know what I was doing. It was like
prints.
COVID. I wasn't even selling prints, bro. Like, that never even clicked for me. I was like, I don't know. But he got through to me, man. He explained it in a way where I was like, oh, like there's a new paradigm now. And if this works, this is in October 2020, right before I started minting.
So right after DeFi summer.
Yeah.
Good times.
And I'm actually one of the first photographers minting on Ethereum. Because I don't know who's before me, but there's definitely people before me.
Yeah.
But November 2020, I was minting on Block Party, Vlad's platform. And I owe that to Jay and Silva because he explained it in a way that was like, there's digital objects now. I'm like, oh, well, if you have digital objects, Hood, everything that objects have, we can have online now. Collectability, markets, art, whatever it is. And I think it'll be everything eventually. I just dove right in. And then JN had his Nifty Gateway drop that December. That was the first NFT I ever bought. And I also bought a Fuocious Open Edition.
Nice.
The day I decided to fly. And then like, I think 2 months later, it was selling at like 17K. I was like, okay.
You're like, all right, something's happening here.
Yeah, like I think this is real.
People might like this.
And so, I mean, I'm, that Fuo pieces and JN's pieces are like the anchors of my collection. Like they're staying there, so. And basically what I realized is that we can replace the attention economy with a real economy. And I was like, I'm not ever going back. So I guess that answers that question. That's a very long-winded answer, but basically good. It's, it's the natural evolution of everything I've been doing my whole life. Like I was like, oh my God, this is the world I've been building for my whole life. Paired with Jay and Silva's the GOAT. And that's it.
JN framing it in a way that it was like, this clicks.
And being persistent and like being like, just leading by example and
Did you know Vlad before Block Party?
No. So Vlad, I met through Fitch.
Yeah. And I might have met you through Fitch if I really think about it, because that was probably, now that I think about it, Fitch was one of the first people, because it was really...
Fitch was working at Block Party, and he like managed my drop, my first ever drop in 2020. And I've sold high resolution film scans. Benny actually owns my first one.
Of course.
Benny's
Zanzibar and
Guppy.
Yeah, Guppy.
They get a lot of shout outs on this pod.
Yeah. I mean, more goats. We have a whole goat farm.
Yeah.
High resolution film scans from my grandfather's Hasselblad. So it's like I put the first thing I put on chain was like the legacy.
So how old is that camera?
Oh, this one was from, I think the model I have is like from the 1970s.
That must feel like an heirloom when you're using.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, I have like tons of Leica glass that was like my dad gave to me in like shrink wrapped boxes, and it was like from, you know, it's amazing, man. I was definitely born to be a photographer. But so what I realized was I was always very good at building communities and attention economies. I'm like, okay, well, you know, I realized this evolutionary psychology factor. I'm like, people love to collect things.
Mhm.
People, like, we are hard coded to identify patterns, and we love it. It's so satisfying. So as I started, you know, learning about what I wanted to build on the space, I was like, you know, I always collected Matchbox cars, and I was like, cars are inherently a collectible class of objects, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if I make, I've been personally collecting photos of cars for a decade.
Mm-hmm.
I just, every time I see a car that has like, I have an account on Instagram called Secret Street, and it's all iPhone shots, street photography in New York City. And I just had certain patterns that I would collect. And one of them is like quirky cars that have like this sense of story and sense of nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
I love the one that you posted today, by the way. So good.
Had to.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like this, I have thousands of pictures like this. So I went through and I picked like all my favorite ones, and I was like, this could be like a Matchbox cars or something like that. And I think it would really resonate with people. And then I also, you know, a lot of my conversations with Silva and conversations with Fitch actually were about NFTs as keys to unlock experiences. And I was like, what if I can hold back 20% of the collection, call them trophies, and then anyone who holds one of those, you know, original NFTs, I can use these as incentives to change their behaviors in the real world in interesting ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, it's turned into this like dynamic global photo contest where if you hold one of these cars, you can submit your own version, like shot in my style, of a car that you see in your neighborhood or in your city or on your travels or something like that. And then I choose the one that fits the best, and I airdrop them one of the trophy cars. And the floor on
really
drive
cool.
is like 2.75 ETH. So like that's a pretty big incentive.
Yeah.
And, you know, every time I get over 100 submissions, and I get people texting me almost every day from all over the world or DMing me.
You got one from me 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly.
We were walking around Williamsburg. I saw that.
Oh, is that the car that was outside the wedding?
Yep.
That was a sick car.
That was the whole reason I took a picture of it.
Yeah.
Because
like,
I own 2 drives.
I have-
and I won a trophy.
yeah.
It was a sick car. It was really cool.
Yeah.
I won the trophy randomly though. I didn't.
That was a drawing.
Yeah. I haven't.
Dude, I was like worried people would be pissed. I was like, I hit it and I was like, oh, it's D's. Like,
I've had insane luck on these spinner drawings. Like people will enter 20, 50 names in.
Yeah.
And I'm like winning like a 5% clip.
It's the universe paying you back.
Yeah, dude.
It's crazy.
If you add value before you ask for value,
Just, the
you never
karma,
have to ask.
the vibes.
But like, if you zoom out and think about Drive, it's like, I've like created a meme that has changed people's real world behavior, and it makes them look around the world and notice the beauty around them more.
And it's a specific shot too. It's a parked car. It's a side profile, and you
Yeah.
want something interesting in the background. It's not about just like capturing a good car in the middle of the road that's moving.
That's
it's
right.
more about getting the whole environment. It goes back to what you talked about, the street photography, the jazz ensemble.
It has to fit the pattern.
Yeah.
It has to fit the meme.
100%.
And so we still have 15 trophies left. So it's like, this is I'm doing it slowly on
Yeah, no,
purpose.
you're smart about it.
Cause I'm like, it's the fuel for the rocket ship. Now, okay. So another experience I had was I was in a clubhouse room with the CEO of Mattel toy company.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, when you think about designing products, he's like, there's 3 tiers. Okay. And notice that Drive has 3 tiers too. Okay.
Yeah.
So he said, what you want is your like, for your diehard collector, you want like that. He's talking about, in the context of toys, right? So let's say an action figure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He's like, you want a product that is like a one of one. It's, you know, maybe it's $20,000 and it's like a hand painted, like beautiful figurine that you buy at like Comic-Con or something like that, right? And you're like, I'm
Life
the biggest
size.
Batman fan of all time.
And maybe it's like an auction. Or,
Master Chief.
Exactly.
12 feet.
Exactly. And, you know, you're going to sell very few of those, but it's like this, it's an aspirational like thing for the community to own that eventually. Right. And then you have your mass market. So then it's like, okay, we're going to do 10,000, Batman action figures, and they're nice, but they're all the same. And it's like, you know, like
They're not
editions.
even numbered. Like you don't even know. Like I have Batman,
and they're like
9,000.
$20 each. But that's where you make most of your money.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like, and then you have your Happy Meal toys, and you actually lose money on them. You pay to put the brand and the meme into the hands of your future customers, which are the children.
That's smart.
So he's like, if you can make a product that hits every one of those tiers, he's like, you cannot fail. I was like, damn. And so I have my super rare 101s. They're like 10 ETH, right?
Yeah.
Then I have Drive, which we sold at like 0.25 to 0.5, and then the Grails on auctions. And
the auctions did very well. Like you basically did the 3-tier just in Drive. It was like the 3 tiers within the 3
tiers. It's fractal.
Tiers.
Like it goes all the way down and all the way out.
Yeah.
And so that brings me to the next thing. Like after a year, the floor of Drive was still like 3 ETH or something like that. And I was like, well, that shows me that there's a lot of people that want to enter this ecosystem still. So I was like, I'm going to 10x my whole supply and at a very cheap price. And that way I can build out my community of invested advocates, collectors. And they, all these rings feed each other. And back to NFTs as incentives, everyone who had a Drive car could claim a free drip drop, a free drip.
I got more, I think, right?
Yeah, depending on what tier you had, you could I was like these things, because you can just, this is the beauty of Web3, like with all these tokens, I just say what I want each token to do. And then these devs just are wizards and can take care of it.
Yeah.
And so now the floor of drip drop as of this recording is like 0.47 or something. So everybody who
is crazy too.
Everybody who invested in me for Drive is up.
Oh yeah. Just I haven't even sold the drips.
Yeah.
They look better together.
Only 5% of drips are listed.
Yeah.
Out of 1,000. So it's like, I'm like, shit. It's awesome. So fun. And so, think of the drips are like the Happy Meal toy. Then there's like, my other smaller editions and collections are like the action figures. And then my super rare are like my masterpieces, my figurines. And all of these tokens interconnect in interesting ways. So like today on my Nifty Gateway drop, if you have a drip, there's a free edition that you can enter to win. And if you own a Spectre, which is my other Nifty Gateway drop, there's another free one I'm just giving away to people who bought that drop. So like
I might have that one.
Yeah.
I need to look.
Yeah, you need to look. So like, and lastly, when I dropped Drive, everybody who had my super rare tokens got first pick of Drive, and they could each pick 3, and everyone else only got 1. And so literally it worked out in a way, if you sold all your Drive cars at the floor, it would exactly equal my floor price of super rare even right now.
Yeah.
Damn.
So it's like everybody always got who invested is always made good.
Yeah.
And if you can do that and sustain that for your life, like that's, I think, how you build a successful career in
it goes
digital
back to what you're talking about with the attention economy versus now we have this real economy. The real economy doesn't need all the attention. Like, granted, you have a ton of attention, but the economy just needs the patrons to support. And like, there's
1,000 true fans. And
but it's even like, I think the 1,000 true fans model, you could even take it to like
10, dude.
10 true collectors.
If I have 10 true collectors, I'd rather have that than 10 million Instagram followers.
Yeah.
I'm serious. Like, I'm dead serious.
I mean, it makes total sense to me.
If you could get 10 guppies.
Yeah.
And
a little pond.
So I have another question about the tiers and how was it, do you think it was important the order in which you rolled out the tiers? Like, was it super rare 1 of 1s and then Drive and then drip? You think that order was important?
I think the order is important because you are building from scratch.
Yeah.
So like you want your first circle to be super tight and like super long-term investors that are like, they understand what you're doing.
How many
then you can build a ring. And then once that ring is full and like there's, it's stable. And like I'm talking about like the floor price is like, oh, it's stable floor. I waited a year to do drip drop because I'm like, I'm making sure that like this is for real.
It's real. Yeah.
And then you can add a ring. Yeah. And then someday I'll add another ring and another ring and another ring. And all the rings will always feed back to the original investors.
Yeah. No, totally. I think one of the things that I've talked about a lot with people is it's one of the things I think NFTs are really great for that like ERC20 tokens haven't done a good job of is allowing teams or companies or individuals to build based on like minimum viable community at any given time. And so it's like you can start with a very small group of people and that's like your minimum viable community at that given time of who can support you and help you continue to build what you want to build. And then once that becomes saturated and you're like, okay, I made these 10 1 of 1s and they've sold out and they're in the hands of people who really like them. Then you like have the ability to expand that. Like you're saying, where you're like, okay, this floor has been here for a long time and I feel confident that there's more demand to own this than like currently people who own these. And then I can release the next thing. And I think like that's a way that I've thought about it a lot, which I think kind of like hits a similar set of ideas of slowly expanding over time to more and more people who want to collect your art or be a part of what you're building.
Yeah. Like let's take it all the way back to the beginning of the conversation with like ecosystems.
Yeah.
Like it starts from a seed, you know, it starts from this little patch of land. You're like, what are you going to do with this little patch of land? And you're like, okay, I'm going to seed it with this idea. I'm going to seed it with this idea. And then, you know, you spend time like weeding and tending the garden and you know, like removing people and adding people, and any network-based system is going to operate like that.
Yeah.
Going back to the block party drop, how many pieces did you drop, and what was like were they all like a flat price? Were they at auction or?
Oh, dude, I think ETH was like, I don't even know. Somebody check.
Back in 2020, it was under $1,000. It was probably like 500.
It was like $500 or something.
Yeah. And then there was a really big drop like around November where it went back down to like 250 or something, I think.
Yeah. I don't even know. I had no idea.
To be
clear,
like 1,000.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this seems cool. Like, I knew that I basically was taking a bet. I'm like, if this works generally like, as a community, if the artists do come, then it will be very important that I did this at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And I to this day, I maintain that. It was a 1 of 1. And then there was 3 editions. Or 2 editions.
And were they open or were they?
No. It was just like, it was just a very limited series, but it was definitely not open.
I mean, obviously Benny and Guppy was one of the first collectors. Did you find that the other collectors of those first ones were the first to support you when you started putting out the 1-on-1s on Super Rare?
It was actually, it was a totally different, group of people.
Mm-hmm.
So between my block party drop in 2020 and then I think I minted my first super rare work in May-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And 33 NFT came in and was very supportive, and like he got on a Zoom with me and was like talking about his thesis about the space and was like, I'll throw my weight. He's like, I like what you're doing. I'll throw my weight behind it. And then I built from there.
Nice.
But that whole like 6-month period, the only other thing I did was I basically only wrote ALLSHIPS articles.
I know that was one of the things I wanted to mention. I feel like going back to adding value before you get any value, like you were
I knew what I had to do
to promote other people.
Yeah.
You were just like, hey, I know a bunch of cool people. I can talk to them and I can provide their perspective. And you weren't only doing artists, but you were showing collectors.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, these are some of my collectors. I interviewed them.
And that's how I learned how to do this all right. You know, like I said, from the block party drop, I barely knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then, but then after talking to 100 different artists and collectors, I was like, I got this now. I know what to do. And, but in between, I did a series of collaborations with, Xsullo.
Nice.
So Xsullo and I did a piece called The Cumanopolis, and he's like a CGI wizard. Like he does like special effects for movies and shit. And, he was always super nice to me. We collaborated on Instagram a lot. And when he saw me getting into the space, he's like, yo, like, let's drop a piece together on Super Rare. And so I sent him a time.
Was he already on Super Rare at the time?
Yeah.
Nice.
He was killing it on Super Rare already. And he still is.
Yeah.
He's an icon. And, I sent him time-lapse footage of New York City, of like a view of the Flatiron building. And it's like this cyberpunk time-lapse, like all these cars whizzing around. And then he built this like crypto world on top of it, where it's like Bitcoin advertisements and there's like the Tesla logo because Tesla was trending at the time. And like there's a museum of crypto art like building. And, we sold that for like 20 ETH.
Nice.
So, and we split it. So I got 10 ETH all of a sudden. I started to collect and I started to get into the collector side of things. But that really put me on the map too. Cause then like a bunch of big collectors started following me. And, big shout out to Xsullo for having my back.
Yeah, no, the collaborations are interesting and how they like maybe the sum of the whole is greater than if you just had the two parts and added them together.
100%.
I feel like there's very few collabs. Like I think recently one that came out that really got my attention was Kaf Samard and Ryan Koopman's one.
Yeah.
Where I was like,
well, if you think about it this way, it's like it's a Venn diagram. So you have like one creator here, one creator there, and
the overlap.
In that like middle of the Venn diagram is a world that only exists at the intersection of two creative minds.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really cool.
Have you done any other big collabs since?
I've done a bunch of different collabs, but not on the scale of what I did with Xsullo.
Yeah.
We did sell another one that was Venice, the Cumanopolis Venice. And Ollie Channon did the music for both, by the way.
Nice. Shout out Ollie.
Yeah, shout out Ollie Channon. And we sold that one for like 17.9.
Any other plans for a third Humanopolis?
Oh, it's coming.
Nice. It kind of sounded like it was when you said there's a second one.
Yeah, I'll leak some alpha. It's going to be Mexico City.
That's going to be cool. Yeah. Do you have a relative timeline for it?
I don't want to speak.
Nah, yeah,
it's basically in his hands. I don't want to speak for him.
It'll be ready when it's ready.
But these are long-term projects, so really excited about it.
When did you first meet him? You said Instagram, but like, is that a relationship you
just
had
online, just like
2014 back?
I'd say I've been following him since like 2016.
Okay,
2016. One more quick shout out, Transient Labs.
Yeah,
because Transient Labs did drip drop, and they created a machine vision system that counted every single drop hitting. It's like it used self-driving car technology to detect emergent rarities within each individual one-of-one drip. And it counts the color, it counts the drops, it counts the shadow versus light, and it counts the chaos like on the surface. And then that built this perfect bell curve of rarity within the collection. It's like if you have a 7-color drip, like hold that shit because they're rare. They're super rare.
It's like the 7 trait punk.
Yeah, exactly. And that was very inspired by Snowfro. And so as I was building Drip Drop, I was on the phone with Snowfro, and Snowfro was like, dude, like this is so cool. He was so excited about it, and he ended up like getting a ton of drips and has been supporting the project. And that was very, very inspired by Chromie Squiggles, the whole drop. And that's why I'm so excited about that project. Is like I'm not the type to like project like false confidence, be like, I did something really cool, but like I'm very, very proud of Drip Drop. I'm very grateful to Guppy and Transient and everybody who helped me with that. And I do think that looking back, it will be a historic collection.
No, I feel like a lot of people don't realize all the technical stuff that went into it. Like they're just like, oh, it's a bunch of colored pictures of water. But when you go into all the work Transient did, and all the work you did, how many pictures of water do you have?
My original batch that I sorted was 15,000.
Holy shit.
And they're all individual photos. And it took me, I've been shooting this for 7 years. And I was just shooting them because I loved it.
Yeah. So like, how did the idea come up? 7 years ago, you started raining. Was it you were caught in the rain one day and had your camera?
No, I always go out and shoot in the rain. Like I have my camera. I'm going to go out and shoot in this rain.
Has that been a thing since you were a kid, or is there a point? Like,
no, it's just
I'm somebody who's naturally.
It's like Blade Runner, dude. It's like I saw Blade Runner and now I'm like poisoned and I have to do this. I'm cursed to wander the streets in the soaking wet rain and with soggy socks.
I'm like a cat. Like I'm like, oh fuck, it's raining. Like I need to get.
No, I love it, dude.
Dry.
I don't even bring an umbrella today. Like I'll just go out there. But basically, what I realized was like photography to me is like we're living in this giant generative artwork. It's the universe, and the source code is like the laws of physics, right? It's like light, time, space, texture. The interactions of all these things, and when I saw the generative art movement explode, like Fidenzas and Chromie Squiggles and everything on art blocks, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like there's a universal code. And I can go out there and I can be like this like ghost in the shell, like in this machine, right? And I can be the one that takes the instances of the code and presents them to an audience that is interested in seeing like the instantiation of the laws of physics. I was like,
I never thought about it like that. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
you're like deciphering the source code almost.
Exactly. And if you
sharing it with the world.
If you think so, PlayStation, famous generative artist, incredible human being, said to me, he's like, I create I put out the code and it just plays forever. Like it'll never stop. And he's like, I, as the artist, decide which instances are important. And this, you just like freeze. It's a slice of time. It's a photograph. Generative art is a photograph of code. And like when I thought about it that way, I was like, photography is generative art. Generative art is photography. And I'm going to make a project that proves it. And that's Drip Drop.
Damn. I have a whole new appreciation for thinking about it when you phrase it that way.
Yeah.
Like photography. Just like, a lot of times I feel like when we talk about I don't think I've ever heard it explained that way.
Yeah. I think about this stuff a lot and I love it.
My thing about the generative art that really blows my mind is when you have something like the Fidenza or Ringer or something where like they aren't hand selecting the outputs, but they're letting the code itself just generate 1,000 pieces or something. And it's like, that has to be so hard to just be like, fuck it, let it go, like see what happens. Like I'm sitting here messing with the new Tyler Hobbs drop, QQL, and like I've generated a few hundred, and I'm just like, I wouldn't mint any of these yet. Like I gotta mint, I need to generate 15,000 before I find one that I would want to mint. And it's like there's something relieving about not having to do that. Like Andy and I have been talking about it a little bit in our Ubers, and it's like letting, you know, the hash or God or whatever the fuck you want to call it determine the output is, I don't know, something so pure about it.
Yeah, I love that too. And it's like, it's almost as if I set up a camera in like Times Square and I was like, set my camera to just take a picture every like 30 seconds.
Or like randomly.
Yeah.
Like maybe I just take a picture for 2 days, 41 minutes and 6 seconds.
Yeah.
And it just like,
but it will create instantation. I'm not just trying to say that word again. It will create instances of beauty. And like, you know, and that's why I had to shoot 15,000 puddles, to get 1,000 that were worth minting.
Yeah.
And the other thing about Drip Drop I want to say is that there's 100 drips still locked in the contract on purpose. Because
similar
I learned
to your drive.
Exactly. So, you know, I've given myself the freedom to think about this, and like, I'm going to do some wild shit because I have 100 more that have never been seen that I can use as incentives to the holders of Drip community to unlock in new ways. And like, you know, we can do mint parties. We can hide them around the city with different codes.
They get hidden. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we can do a scavenger hunt. Like I advise artists to think about, not necessarily like utility, but just like have fun. Have fun, because this is like these are little keys that can unlock anything. They can unlock experiences. They can unlock you know, value. They can be donated. That, you know, there's just so like we're in such fresh ground. It's like just plant seeds and just see what grows.
No, were you inspired by any projects before the like held supply? Because I always think of CryptoPunks where it was like, hey, they kept 10%, zero fees, but like, what made you kind of think like I need to hold the supply? Like,
I think it was just drive. I was like, I want to gamify this collection, and I didn't even know CryptoPunks.
And rather than like minting another 20 on top of the 100, it's better to keep that percent.
It's a treasury.
And lock it in. Yeah. So then you don't have this, oh, Dave can mint more. Yeah. It's like, no, he's taking from that original.
Yeah. Exactly. And everyone knows the total final supply.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of people don't even know that the final supply of Drip Drop is 1111. But there's only 1,000 out there.
Because they go on OpenSea and it shows 1,000.
Right. It shows 1,011 because there's 11 grails.
Yeah.
But there's 100 left, and you know, I'll never release it in a way that will damage like the supply.
I think Snowfro, the way I mean, I was there when he paused the minting contract on the Squiggles.
That was a big inspiration to me.
Originally, Snowfro was like, I thought this would last a year.
Yeah.
Like I thought we could just go mint forever. And when he saw it getting minted out in that January, February timeframe, he's like, yeah. And I remember when he made the call that he was going to pause it, all of us degens were like 1,000 Gwei.
Fast gas.
We were
in there.
like any mint over 9,000 in that time, like he meant to stop it at 9,000, but more got minted because we were like, no, fuck that. We need one more rule. So like, I feel like it got to like 9,100 or something, 9,150.
Dude, but like that enabled him to do such cool things too. Like,
it's so cool.
He traded me a random Squiggle mint for a 1 of 1 of mine.
Oh.
So he has a cool 1 of 1 from me that he traded me for a random Squiggle mint, and I got a crazy tube Squiggle.
Oh, nice.
And that's one of the anchors of my collection. It's fire, dude.
What color? A pipe? When you say tube, do you mean ribbed pipe?
Oh,
slinky?
It's a pipe, but it's not a hyper pipe.
Yeah, well, I mean, a hyper pipe, there's only like less than 10.
It's like green and blue, and it's just beautiful. I'll show it to you after we stop recording.
I would love to show you my pipe too.
I'll show you.
I got a lot of Squiggles, a lot of pipe. A nice ribbed pipe. No, I'm done. I'm done. Where did Snowfro get these names?
I got a hyper pipe just thinking about it.
Just minted a new rare.
So outside of some of the, I guess, how tightly coupled do you feel like ALLSHIPS is with your own personal work, and how do you like see those things continuing to like interplay with each other? And
I keep using the term, as an artist, I kind of identify as like a social sculptor.
Mm-hmm.
So like everything I do is interconnected and woven together. ALLSHIPS is my dedication to the creative community.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is like I am using like anything I ever make off my art is like to bootstrap ALLSHIPS.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I own the entire platform. I've never raised any money for it. I'm not opposed to that, but I would sell something on Super Rare and I would just take all the money and I would pay devs in ETH and they would build the site for me.
Yeah.
And so if a collector invests in me, they're investing in ALLSHIPS too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of fits my ecosystem model.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, if you come to my forest, like, you can hang with all my forest friends. Like, it's like a Disney movie of like, there's the...
It's like Avatar, we're all up in the tree.
Exactly. And I like that analogy better. Let's use that one.
It kind of reminds me of the mycelium. We're putting our hair into shit, connecting.
Yeah, and like I take this money and like I'll buy out a bar and be like, everybody come meet me at the bar. Like, we're making this real. For ALLSHIPS, the ALLSHIPS Social Club.
Yes,
you're wearing the shirt, and so like, and that's where I've met so many of my collectors, like people who showed up to the bar and are like, oh, what's ALLSHIPS? And I'm like, don't worry about it, just hang out. Like, this is ALLSHIPS. People are always like, oh, how do I join ALLSHIPS? I'm like,
you're in it.
I'm like, do you believe that, a creative life is possible? They're like, yeah. I'm like, congratulations. You're on the ship with us, man. And, so it's all completely, woven together.
Yeah.
Where'd you get the name ALLSHIPS from?
So it's from the expression, all ships rise with the tide, or a rising tide raises all ships. Mm-hmm. And it's the idea that like, somebody else's success does not take away from yours. Mm-hmm. Especially with these technology layers. We are in an era of abundance in terms of technology, I think. And somebody else's win is them showing you what's possible.
Yeah.
Like somebody like Drift is like, the fact that he can do what he did with his body of work and his story and stick, through all the hard times and literally fight against like the government. Like,
yeah.
Like what an uphill battle, right? And everything he's been through. I'm at like, there's probably artists out there that are like mad that he's selling, for these prices. And like, why don't I sell for those prices? It's like, celebrate this. He showed you that this is possible. And then you got to do it in your own way. But his win is opening doors for you. Mm-hmm. And if you frame it any other way, you're going to be in a lot of trouble as an artist, because you just can't live like that. You have to know that if I see people in the photography community making big sales, I'm like, I'm a photographer. We're fucking killing it.
Yeah.
It's like photography is killing it. Mm-hmm. And then you could go outside of that and be like, oh, well, like, people who are doing paintings are selling this week that for tons. And I'm like, oh, I'm an artist. They're an artist. Artists are killing it. Like, this is great. We're all building this together. And that's why I chose the name ALLSHIPS. It's because like, I will never be jealous. I will always be celebratory. And I will realize that if my friends win, I'm winning. Mm-hmm. And if I win, my friends win.
Yeah, and it's having an abundance mindset. Yeah. It's not being thinking of the space in zero sum. Like, Dave sold his piece for 10 ETH. Like, that's 10 ETH less that isn't going to be bid on my piece. And I think a lot of maybe new artists get caught up in that too much. And it's a lot of people don't see the backstory. And I think that's one of the reasons we like this podcast. Like, talking to you've been around for like 10 years. When did you get on Instagram? 2013. You built that community for like 7 years before you found NFTs in 2020. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of artists come in, and if they don't hit, something within 3 to 6 months, they get burnt out. Or, I feel like showing this backstory and then showing how the abundance mindset works is so important, because a lot of new market participants just saw the money and just saw the big sales. And like, when it didn't happen to them, they got almost like scorned in a way.
Yeah.
And
I mean, look at how many people bounced off the space, Then there's another interesting thing. I'm going to say 2 things here. So Punk 2070.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great collector.
Shout out to Punk 2070. Been very, very supportive. He tweeted something the other day that was like, if you don't have a track record of sharing your art for like years, he's like, I'm hesitant. Mm-hmm. Because like, anybody now has, can just come on and be like, I'm an artist. And then you look at what they've made and they're like, they haven't been participating in the community. Mm-hmm. So like, my participation in artistic communities goes back to like when I was 8, you know? And I have like a chain, like literally, it's like, it's not a blockchain, but it's like an information chain, a time chain that is like, oh, that this is, you can see my entire, if you go on my Instagram, I have like 3,500 posts and you see the entire arc of my life. Like, and me learning photography in real time and like talking about events I'm doing and pictures of group, like of all the people we got together. And like, if you're investing in an artist and you see that, you're like, oh, this dude's not going anywhere.
Exactly.
Like, and he's only going to continue to do this, or him or her, you know? So I think that's really important to say. The other thing about social media that I think is interesting, and any new technology layer, is like, there's so many photographers that absolutely kill it on Instagram, and they haven't woken up to this yet. They haven't woken up to Web3 yet, and they're really resistant to. And there's a sweet spot of people that are thriving in Web3 that were very popular on social media, but there's a kind of a weird threshold where if the current system is working for you so well, you're very afraid of a new system coming along, and you get very angry when the people that you considered below you on social, that you never gave the time of day, are starting to make way more money than you, making the art they want to make, as opposed to making these compromises with global brands to, you know, advertise to their communities. So like, it's really interesting to see like these huge social media, you know, YouTubers and everybody who have made millions of dollars off advertising not understand what's coming, and being so fearful and of this technology layer. And to them, I would just say, the water's warm. Jump in, because you can either enter now on your own terms and build like, you know, your own way, like the way I was able to build Drip Drop and Drive and build my own contracts and build my own community and be a sovereign artist, or you can, you know, do it through Instagram in 5 years. And it's going to suck for you. Cause like, you know, the way I even built up my Instagram presence, like, you can't do that. It was only because I was early that I was able to ride this like network effect to hundreds of thousands. Even 2 years after I started on Instagram, like people were like, how do you get 100K? I'm like,
a time machine.
Yeah. Cause you just can't do it anymore unless you like buy advertising, and then you get, you know, all these bots, and it's just like, so, you know, I just encourage artists that if you're seeing Instagram start to build out their NFT offerings already, like just please don't ignore what's happening, because it's going to be so much harder in the future.
And also for the artists who haven't ignored it and have minted but haven't sold, like, please don't burn your fucking NFTs. Like, I see a lot of artists who minted things in 2020 and they burned it because it didn't sell in 2021. And it's like, I think there'll be a time where just having something minted in that period of time will be valuable in some way.
Dude, I have a super rare token from 2021 that isn't sold. I would never burn that. That's a 2021 super rare token.
Yeah.
You know how much that's going to like mean to me in 10 years?
Yeah.
Like, if I can't even imagine, it's one of my favorite photos I've ever made. Like, I put it on the chain, you know, it's like, that's for real. And I completely agree with you. Like, do not, unless there's some weird mechanic you're doing where like,
maybe you're burning something to unlock something else, or like, I do understand the argument of like burning something to move to Manifold if it hasn't sold yet. But like, even then, if it's a really early mint, it feels really bad to burn it and then just say like, oh, I give up with this piece, or I'm going to do it another way.
Just a quick question. When is this going to come out? Cause I want to say something, but I don't want to like leak it before.
I would say it will be out in the middle of this specific episode, probably middle of November, between middle of November and Christmas.
Okay, cool. Can I leak something that's coming?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm working with Transient Labs on an extension of Drip Drop, and it's called Storm Drain. Okay, so what you can do is you can go to the ALLSHIPS site where we have our whole ecosystem, dripdrop.allships.co, and you can stake your drips into a contract, and it's like a ranked auction, but it's drip based. So you can only bid.
So you bid in drips.
You bid in drips. Okay, so it's like, and you always have to bid like one drip more than the person below you. You can't you can't remove drips. Or
I won't buy more drips with this alpha. Like I will not take this information and use it for my own gain. For the people listening, I own 5 drips. Check my wallet.
Check the chain.
I'm not going to own more drips when this podcast release.
And so what it does is whoever has the most drips in the contract after a certain amount of time, there's also a collateral is one of my one-of-ones. And you can basically win one of my one-of-ones, and then I get the drips back in my wallet.
Bullish.
It swaps them. And then I take all those drips and I redistribute them to the community with gamified like systems to spread the memetics of the project. And
I like that.
Yeah, it's just,
so you're incentivizing some of us with multiple drips do a little staking, do a little
100%.
Yeah, well, and so that's really interesting because it allows you to, you held back 100, but you never have to run out.
Right.
Even if you use all of those 100, by the time you use those 100, you've got another 100 more that you've accumulated from releasing new one-of-ones to drip holders and all these different things. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it's the reason I even brought that up is because of the conversation about burning.
Mm-hmm.
So like you could do that mechanic and burn drips, but then you're decreasing the supply. And like if you can recirculate like the water system itself, like that's why it's called storm drain.
Yeah,
they go down into the storm drain. And then they go back up into the clouds, and then they rain back down upon the community. And so, like, when you think about building these projects, like, that, like, I haven't seen anybody do anything like that.
Yeah.
No.
And so I'm so excited. I think that's gonna launch in mid-October.
Nice.
Oh, nice. Yeah. This will definitely.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't
No, you're good.
Yeah.
give the idea to the world before I do it first.
No.
That's really cool.
But after I do it, I'm like, take it, run with it. Like, please.
Well, no, it's always probably gratifying too when you do something cool like that, and then other people copy it. Like,
I love it.
There was something there. Like that wasn't just me. Coming up with something. That was like, that was.
I've had many artists approach me and be like, the way you did Drive has inspired, the way I did my collection, because just using it to incentivize behaviors.
Yeah.
I think it's what a fascinating time to be an artist. Truly.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any better time to be an artist than right now?
I don't think so.
Probably not.
I mean, it depends what you're paying attention to.
Yeah.
I think the artists in this space are having
if you're a curious artist.
And the other thing about art coming to this community of blockchain and crypto is like, I don't know, we're in a pretty bad like bear.
Mm-hmm.
It's not crazy bad, but it's like we're in a little, it's
pretty bad.
It's not great.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
We're down a lot.
Yeah.
It's not great, but we're sitting here like chilling.
Yeah.
The vibes are immaculate.
It's great.
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to do with like the cultural layer that we've been working on for the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's way different than the last bear. I mean, last bear was dead Telegram chats, dead Discords, dead devs. It was like people just in chat when price go up, when news, when anything. Now it's like, we're just looking at good art coming out. I'm like, oh man, some art's getting stolen. Like, right now DK Motion has a piece up. I was looking at it. It has like a bid at 69 ETH. And I'm like, wow, like the last DK pieces were going to Kazomo for $1 million. And this one might go for 100K. It's like, there's still great art coming out. Not everyone has 100K to buy a DK Motion piece, but like, just as an example, there's still good art coming out by great artists that, might not be selling for what it was last year.
I think that's the thing that will sustain us from cycle to cycle is like this beautiful, creative community.
Mm-hmm.
I love the kind of almost like reflexivity of the creative community where you give more ETH to the artists and it gets redistributed back to artists. Like I knew if I took 20% of my post flip profit and plowed it into art, then like, and sometimes some scenarios, 50% of that 20% would get redistributed to other artists. Almost to a point where it was like, I had to tell my artist friends I was buying art from, like, put your mask on first. Like, take some profits out of the ecosystem.
That's a good, I like
because they're just
metaphor.
out there just buying all their friends' art immediately. Like, you buy a piece for 5 ETH and then that person just bid 1 ETH on 3 different pieces. And you're like, yo, like, you can't even cover your tax bill now. Like,
chill out.
But it's awesome in the sense that, like, every artist feels like they want to give back and like promote this culture. I feel like sometimes there's this unfair vibe in the space that almost expects artists to give back too much.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's ridiculous.
There's people who get called out, like they sell a piece and they don't spend $100,000 of their $500,000 on art, and people are like, "What are you doing?" And it's like,
dude, like probably more than half the artists in the space are like drowning in like college debt. Like
no one had money until
our educational system is so fucked. Like, if you're an art, like, dude, I feel just so bad for artists that, have been getting taken advantage of their entire life and went to school for a degree that they don't use and are now, paying like it's over $200,000 to go to college.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? When are you going to save $200K on your job? You're not. It's a trap. It's like, it's just a really bad system.
And they don't understand the finances. They're taking out loan at like 5-8%. And they're just getting,
because you're like 17 years old.
Yeah, you don't understand what the fuck.
And you don't know that there's, it's just insane. So don't ever, you don't ever feel like you're obligated to spend your money.
Put your mask
anywhere.
on first.
I think there are a few things more lame in the crypto space than people trying to tell other people what to do with their money.
Yeah, I mean, the
and
whole point of it
all the time.
The whole point of crypto is to be self-sovereign.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's like one of the issues with the public chain.
Yeah.
Like there are times where you don't want all your finances to be public. Like people look at your wallet and they're like, why aren't you support artists? It's like, well, did you not see the like hundreds of NFTs that I've...
Well, and it's like, and you don't know anyone's personal life. Like it's just that kind of stuff really frustrates me because it's just like, you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what their family's going through. And maybe they really needed that money or they really can't afford to do it.
Yeah. Or maybe they didn't pay their taxes yet.
Yeah.
Like
no one here.
Not me. I'm good. But.
So if you had anything that, thinking back, I feel like, I was not aware of just how thoughtful your entire approach to all of this was. Is there anything that you would have done differently now, other than just minting things earlier?
No. I'm just kidding. Of course. Yeah.
I nailed it.
Look, I mean, I just in life in general, you can't really look back.
Yeah.
I think I'm a very bad trader, so I don't really do it.
Yeah.
I think that hesitation had me miss a lot of like, huge opportunities. Like I was so burned by the Nifty Gateway, like open edition, like wave.
Yeah, it was like Q1, Q2, 2021.
Yeah, I was
every weekend, and Dead Mouse, Eminem, whoever the fuck.
All these celebrities coming in and just literally like extracting, doing it
millions,
doing it absolutely the wrong way. By the way,
Eminem toys, digital, the Eminem digital toys. I remember.
Don't even bring up Grimes, bro.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just come in, they make millions of dollars, and they never talk about it again. It's like, okay, that's not what we're doing here. But I was so burned by that like when Bored Apes were minting, I was sitting there at my computer and I'm like, I'm not minting this fucking shit.
Look at these fucking
look at these things. They're so ugly. I was like, no way.
Right on a bathroom wall.
And then
fuck wants right on a bathroom
wall? Yeah. All my friends, in my group chats were like, oh, I minted 10.
John Knopf on mushrooms.
Yeah. Just like
the classic.
Minting these things. And then like, a year later, it's like, what the fuck? Like, why didn't I, like the one thing, and I had all the alpha, I was sitting right there. So I don't know. I mean,
I didn't mint any either. If it makes you feel better.
Yeah.
I got
that does make me feel better.
I got an honorary.
I was offered one for free and said no thanks.
I got the honorary. I'm like, oh, like you don't have a hoodie trait in the collection like my honorary has one? I'm good. Like,
yeah,
I'll just be the hoodie one you gave me.
Yeah.
And I bought my first one when they were like 7th.
Incredible. Yeah, no, I don't know. So like my hesitation has cost me a lot of opportunity, and I only want that, I only want those resources so that I can go harder with ALLSHIPS.
Yeah.
Like, dude, we just did a retreat upstate with like 40 of, my family and my friends and all my favorite artists and collectors. And like I can't even describe like how good it was. And we're going to just do it every year, man. Like I want money to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just provide for people and show the world and show every kid in the back of the class doodling in their notebook that a creative life is possible. Because that was me.
Yeah. That's really cool.
No, I feel like NFTs enable that so much, where before it was just like you post the art and you don't even own your art.
Try to sell some shit on Etsy.
Yeah. I mean, everything before digital objects is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. Like it's just, you have a copy of my image on your phone. There's no original. There's no original photo unless it's on your hard drive and then no one sees it. So it's like, what are we doing? But now we can signify a digital original, and like then everything can stem and feed that. Every copy is an advertisement for the original.
How did you come to understand like digital scarcity and valuing digital objects?
You know what's funny? I was thinking about this the other day, and I'm like, there's no difference between digital scarcity and like scarcity of prints. Like I can run as many prints of my photos as I want. It's just on paper. Like, so people are like, oh, you're creating artificial scarcity. I'm like, no, like if I choose to print 20 prints and then I decide not to print anymore, that's also artificial scarcity. There's no difference.
Yeah, you could print more whenever you want.
Yeah. So it's like there is no scarcity in the world for that, for art.
For art.
Yeah. There is scarcity, I would say, with like, if you're a painter and you paint, this masterpiece, like that's real scarcity. But for digital things, so if I'm taking digital photographs, there's no real scarcity there. It's just data. So if it's data and then I turn it into paper, or it's data and then I turn it into a token, that's the same thing. So anything that happens in art markets can happen on chain too. And that's what I realized. I was like, oh shit, like this is amazing. And it's such a pain in the ass to like the friction of like having a print operation, let alone the environmental impact
of actually killing trees.
Yeah. Cutting down trees and shipping stuff all over the world.
Ink on the tree.
And you putting it on a plane and it flies to London.
And then when it gets in London, the guy at the custom steps on it because he didn't like it, and then it gets bent, and you have to get another print and send it back.
Yeah, so like the frictionless nature of like our global creative economy is like why I'm so bullish on it. Yeah. It's just more efficient systems win. And I'm glad I'm here early for it because it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's the first time that artists and creatives have really had like an actual 24/7 global marketplace where anyone can come and participate.
Yeah.
And
a global currency.
Yeah. And that unlock is just fucking massive.
Yeah, it's so big.
We are getting close. It is 12:30. We have a question that we ask every guest.
Okay.
And that question is, if you had to title an autobiography, what would it be?
Ooh.
And you can think about it. You can marinate on it.
Yeah.
It's cooking. I already have two in my head, but
I have a guess of what yours would be, but I'll wait till you say it. I don't want to influence you.
I mean, a rising tide raises all ships would be pretty good.
Yeah.
But I do love like a creative life is possible.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Did we get another answer that was very similar to that? It's something
I think
about
Fuo's was really similar.
Creativity unlocks. It was very similar. But I love that. I feel like mine's a Lindy walk. You could it.
I can see the cover, bro. You have to let me shoot the cover because I know what to do. A Lindy walk.
Let's do it.
You're just in a field, like
maybe some lavender.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that for you, D's. Yeah, and then mine, I always say mine changes depending on my mood, but right now it's fuck it, we ball. Just from, and I feel like it can sound aggressive, but I really more mean it from the like more just being optimistic. And if things don't seem like they're going your way, fuck it, we ball. We're just gonna do it anyways. We're gonna figure it out.
I like that.
Yeah.
Has anyone ever asked you this question before?
No.
Good. That's my goal with the question. Right. So somebody, I jacked it from somebody. I went on a podcast. They asked me the question. I was on the Afropolitan podcast.
That's a
talking
good one.
to Eshe, and he asked me it. And I just sat there and I was like, I've never been asked this. I'm going to take this.
A Lindy walk.
I
like it. Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Are there any shout outs? I know you have we mentioned Storm Drain coming out in mid-October. Are there any other
That's
things?
going to be in the past when this comes out.
Yeah.
It came out a few weeks ago. Check it out.
Yeah, check it out.
I already unlocked all my drips. I bit on the first Storm Drain. It's all over. It's gone.
Yeah, you guys missed it. D swept the floor.
Right after this podcast ended, I just bought 25 of them.
I would just say connect with me online. I'm Dave_Krugman on Twitter. My link tree is linktree.com/Dave Krugman. Everything's there. Check me out on Super Rare. That's like my real, that's where like my like legacy will be minted. And then everything else, drip, drop, drive, pay attention. I'm trying to do some really cool things. Follow and support ALLSHIPS, because like that's really what I'm trying to do in this world, is just make sure that people who are drawn towards creativity have a home, and a home away from the pitfalls of attention economies. Even the hoodie that you're wearing, on the back it says resist the algorithms, because it's like there's a trap, and the trap is you can fall into this if you're not careful. You can don't let an algorithm hijack your creative voice. Because if you just keep satisfying the algorithm, it's reprogramming your brain to do repetitive things. Because like the best way to grow on Instagram is just to make the same thing every day and put it out at the same time. And that's how you hack the algorithm. And people do that, and then they wake up one day and they don't even recognize what they're doing. And it's a very dangerous place to be. So resist the algorithms, support ALLSHIPS. Let's change the world together.
We don't need any more landscape photography reels on Instagram. Resist the algorithm.
Resist the
we
algorithm.
Don't need the wanderlust girl wearing shapewear, walking into the distance with a mountain. I've seen 9 million of them. Resist it. Do something creative.
Social media is the fast food of information. Too many chicken nuggets on the table.
Chicken nuggets are
it's all
great,
McDoubles all the way down.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Of course.
This was a blast. Looking forward to next time we get to hang. We got to hang more.
Yeah, let's get at dinner soon for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
I literally am texting Benny about a dinner like tonight or tomorrow.
Amazing. So, okay. I'm around.
Trying to figure that out. Yeah. I'm actually going to make a group text after this.
Okay, great. Perfect.
Sweet.
All right.
Wrap it up.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks so much, guys. Bye.
Thank you.